When I was 17, I traveled to a little town in eastern Belgium called Tilf to join for the first time in my life an environmental project as volunteer. I'd always been passionate about nature and conservation, as probably many of us have, but I never had the opportunity to dive into the deepness of activism as a living, embracing and empowering global community of changemakers. It was in that little town that my life radically changed. It was in the green Belgian countryside that I realized how interconnected is the fight to prevent the ice melting in the Arctic with the fires that ravage the green, endless expanses in the Amazon. Since then, I've been joining environmental projects in 8 different countries, volunteering with more than 170 activists from across the world. It was in that little town that I realized that we are in a war. We are in a war against ourselves, and we are losing. In 2020, the climate crisis has extensively demonstrated the potential scale that its impacts could have on our own future. From the wildfires in Australia and the United States to what is expected to be the fastest glacial defrosting in the Arctic since the last ice age. From the abrupt escalation in extreme weather events across the globe to the increasing global temperature, climate change has never looked so real. And yet, non-existent or indecisive climate action dominates the tables of international politics. And it occurred to me that the problem may lie in the agents that have been given the mandate to deal with this crisis, or rather in the ones that have not been entrusted with this responsibility. And we may need to reconsider who should hold the climate leadership of climate global governance, who could revolutionize the way we think about environmental activism and help to build a more inclusive bottom-up rhetoric for climate action. And I think we may have underestimated the potential of one specific agent: universities. Why do I say universities? Well, if we consider that the type of change we would need as a society to successfully counter this global climate emergency is a dramatic social change of global scale, taking into account models of change such as the ones developed by John Kotter, Harvard Business School professor and change expert, we can immediately grasp that 2 fundamental ingredients of change-making are establishing a sense of urgency and creating a guiding coalition. First, students and educators can be pivotal players in communicating a sense of urgency. We live in a unique and unprecedented time where a significant generational share of current educators have been learning and absorbing the key messages of environmentalism from philosophical strays of ecology, beginning from the 1960s through green political movements worldwide. At the same time, these very messages have lived a renaissance thanks to campaigners such as Swedish activist Greta Thunberg, the Fridays for Future movement, which managed to revitalize and empower the global youth to expose and condemn the apathy of the modern man vis-à-vis the looming collapse of our ecosystems. The coexistence of these 2 specific groups, of a climate-conscious layer of educators and young climate activists, would suggest that universities are indeed the natural place where a sense of climate urgency can not only be shared, but also advocated for actively. And the recent history of climate initiatives in universities would seem to support this theory. A stunning and ever-increasing number of universities have been signing the Global Climate Letter, declaring the state of climate emergency and committing to go carbon neutral by 2030. A 2019 United Nations report further reported a staggering number of 1,045 signatories to the Sustainable Development Goals in the university and college sector, across not 1, not 3, but 85 different countries. 71% of those signatories believed that climate action should be their number 1 priority. However, lack of funding was the most reported issue hindering any progress in that field. And it is here that understanding the second ingredient of change-making becomes essential. As a matter of fact, universities cannot possibly become the sole agents of climate action. They cannot bear on the burden of a global climate emergency. What universities can do, however, is engaging in an inclusive discussion with organizations, firms, startups, or even informal groups that have been already doing some forms of climate activism in their fields, but do not have the technical knowledge or expertise or networks to scale their actions out of the local context. Earlier this year, a group of university students and I decided to give this a try in our own city, Rome. And we started mapping the already existing entities that were bringing climate initiatives in their fields of expertise. Our underlying assumption was that there already is the human capital and willingness sufficient and necessary to promote sustainable carbon-neutral solutions for our cities. But that those solutions are scattered realities. They are fragmented pieces of a puzzle we refer to as climate action, a puzzle that is not a zero-sum game. How many organizations would you believe that in a single city are actively promoting climate initiatives? My own guess was between 10 and 30 in the best case scenario. Well, in less than 2 months, we identified more than 70 different realities. After receiving a positive response from a number of them, we decided to create the Council of Sustainability, an inter-organizational platform aiming to empower its components through know-how sharing, information pooling, and targeted synergies, universities being the core catalyzers of all these processes. Joining organizations do not only receive human resources and data, but also, and most crucially, other valuable assets that can be easily provided by partner organizations from other fields of expertise. And thanks to those unique assets, platform members can gain now a strategic edge over competing entities in their own sector. Through the Council of Sustainability, universities in Rome can now identify strategic stakeholders for their own climate action plans, create roundtables, organize cooperation programs that are embracing of a wide array of different realities. It is then universities that then can interface with national or regional institutions, providing informed policy recommendations that are not based on some abstract or theoretical framework, but rather on practical local solutions that have already proven successful in an urban setting and now have a potential of scalability to a national or even supranational dimension. Moreover, thanks to the authority of this platform, local, small organizations can now voice their innovative ideas for a more sustainable future to a wider audience. Our world desperately needs this kind of energetic, knowledge-driven, and inclusive model of climate leadership. These citywide coalitions have all it takes to guide climate action, to inform policy decisions, and most importantly, to radically change how we think of climate activism with a more inclusive and multi-stakeholder approach. As you walk out of this room, remember 2 things. First, don't ever be afraid to voice your fears for our common future. Social change can thrive if and only if we manage as a species to convey a sense of urgency. Second, you're not alone. You're not alone against this titanic, seemingly invincible enemy that is global warming. Look around you. Find a friend in your local universities, and as the starting point to build networks that then are able to combat and defeat our common climate Goliath. As the former Secretary General to the United Nations, Ban Ki-moon, said, "We are the first generation to be able to end poverty, but we are the last generation that can take steps to prevent the worst impacts of climate change." We must enable universities to become the harbingers of climate action. Our planet will be grateful.